You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast, dedicated to the 40-plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation. All right, welcome back to the 40 Fit Radio podcast and the 40 Fit Nation. I'm your Coach. I'm your hooch. Okay, there you go, Trent. You got to put that one in. I'm your host, Coach D, and we just started drinking a little glass of whiskey here, and I promise you that's not it. But I got my good friend with me here tonight, Dr. Steve Lawson, who is a previous pastor. He's still a pastor, but he's not pastoring a church right now. And he is the founder of a international ministry. What's that called again, Steve?
Leadership Transformation International.
There you go. And I'll let him tell you a little bit about what he does with that. And he's also an expert in emotional intelligence. So welcome back, Steve.
Thank you, sir.
And originally, Steve and I were going to have him back on the program to talk more about emotional intelligence. And I think the last podcast that we recorded and launched was back in, it was before you went to Nigeria, Steve.
Yeah,
so when was that?
So April.
April? That's what I was going to say. So we did a podcast in April on emotional intelligence and how that relates to your fitness and being an older athlete, an older master's aged individual, and how you can kind of harness that to improve your overall life. And we were going to do a second series, but in between that podcast and this one, a pretty significant life event occurred in Steve's life.
Yeah.
And
somewhat.
Yeah. And I'm going to let you tell about what you do first.
Okay.
And where you went immediately following our podcast.
Right.
I know you went to Nigeria to do work in the northern part of Africa. And then you can tell a little bit about what happened from there.
All right. Sure. So what we do is we travel throughout the world really and going into mainly developing world nations to train pastors and business leaders who don't have access to training or can't afford it or both. A lot of areas that we go to, especially for the pastors, they might have some education, elementary education. They can read usually, but a lot of times, when you live in the jungle of, off the Amazon, then there's not a lot of opportunities, I guess.
Yeah.
But we also go to areas like Russia, China, where pastors aren't going to have any access to theological education. India, Nepal, some of those areas, sure. It's becoming increasingly difficult. So we'll go in, do conferences for them, do training events, things like that.
And this is all self-funded?
It's all self-funded. Yeah, my ministry is all self-funded, or I have some supporters who help, kind of carry the load as far as that goes.
Sure.
Because it's quite expensive to fly all over the world to do this. I travel with an organization called Global Advance much of the time, and though I'm doing more things on my own leadership courses and things like that. So in May, first week of May, I was in Nigeria. We did a pastors' conference there, and that was quite a fascinating experience. We were in northern Nigeria, about 2 hours north of Abuja, the capital city. And the way Nigeria is laid out is from Abuja south is primarily Christian, and Abuja north is primarily Muslim. So we were in Muslim-controlled northern Nigeria. And
now, would you consider that like conservative Muslim, radical Muslim,
It runs the gamut.
Okay,
yeah. That area is terrorized by the Boko Haram.
Okay.
Though there are plenty of moderate Muslims or non-practicing, like any religion.
Right.
But the danger's there. We ran into a couple of hairy situations. Me and Joel, the other American that was with me. Me and Joel T. Meyer from Sulphur Springs, and Charles Ikutuminu, who is Nigerian, though he lives in Texas now. So that's where we were. And these pastors that came to this conference, almost everyone in the building, a couple hundred pastors, have gone through massive traumatic events, in the course of their ministry. Had their churches burned down, fire bombs. Many of them have had friends and family members killed in front of them murdered in the streets. This is what they face every day. And the fact that they were coming for training so they could go back home and continue doing what put them in that kind of danger was quite humbling for us.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are rock stars.
Yeah, we think,
as far as I'm concerned.
We think we're persecuted here in the States.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah, listening to people complain about things, is difficult when you've talked to this group.
Yeah.
Well, while I was in Nigeria, evidently I got bit by a mosquito. I don't remember getting bit by a mosquito. I distinctly remember one night Joel and I sitting outside on a patio, and he was getting eaten alive. Nothing landed on me. But I evidently got bit once because from that trip, I was home for 10 days, and then my wife and I flew to Siberia. We were going to do a church planters seminar there. And on the way to Siberia, I started getting sick.
Okay.
And that kind of progressed. 2 days into that trip, I was supposed to preach at a church over the weekend. That didn't happen. I was too sick. We didn't know what it was. Sunday night, I basically went into a coma. And my wife, arranged to get an ambulance there, which was not really an ambulance.
Yeah,
it was a
van.
It was a
with
van
a cot on the back.
Yeah, with a cot in the back.
So you're in Siberia, dude.
Siberia.
So, and this is not. Is this a big town in Siberia, a big city, or?
It was a city of about 500,000 people.
Okay.
So it's a decent-sized town, yeah.
But when you talk about the healthcare, being in healthcare myself here, and how advanced, people gripe and complain about the American healthcare system. But if you've ever been treated here and you think it's bad, you just need to travel to Europe or some third world country, or even more, organized nations, first world countries who don't have the system that we do. What was the healthcare system like there?
I have no idea. I was in a coma. My wife says...
Well, I heard the stories.
Yeah. Karen said it's what you would expect if you think about a Russian hospital from 50 years ago.
Yeah.
There was no waiting area. I mean, once they got me to the hospital,
okay,
they wheeled me in down a hallway and then left me in the hallway. And the EMTs or whatever they are there disappeared. Karen's freaking out because I was already having trouble breathing, but she said it's concrete walls, drab paint's peeling off the walls. No one is around. There's not a waiting area. There's not a reception area. There's nothing. Yeah. And they finally came.
No cappuccino. No Starbucks coffee in the corner.
No Starbucks. No cafeteria to go to.
Oh, man.
Yeah, no recliners. Nothing. Yeah. Stark hallways.
Yeah.
And they came and eventually took me away, and that was the last she saw of me for 5 days. And those doctors wheeled me away and began to work on me, trying to figure out what's going on. Now, understand, malaria doesn't exist in Russia.
Right. I
mean, especially Siberia. Mosquitoes don't exist in Siberia.
Right. So you basically got so the form of malaria that you had was cerebral malaria.
Cerebral malaria.
One of the most severe forms.
It's the most severe form of malaria.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think when you contracted it, and Karen reached out on Facebook and contacted me, I started researching online. I went to Wikipedia. I went to. It's like there's like 70 million people a year still today that die from malaria. So a lot of people die from this.
Yeah.
I mean, a large majority of the people that contract cerebral malaria die from this.
Yes.
It's a very high death rate with this.
It's a very specific medication that you're supposed to get for cerebral malaria. And the issue was, well, first of all, they didn't know what it was.
Right.
And it took them a day or two to figure it out till they finally heard Karen say I had been in Nigeria.
Yeah, you had a tropical disease in Siberia.
Right. Yeah. And so...
what are the chances?
Yeah, those doctors had never seen Siberia, never seen malaria, never diagnosed it, never treated it.
Wow.
Medication for malaria did not exist in the hospital.
Sure. Makes sense.
So once they figured out that's what it was, then they began calling all over town, trying to find some medicine. And they finally found 2 boxes of pills for regular malaria.
Right.
At 2 different pharmacies, which Karen and the pastor Ilya and his wife Janet had to drive and get. Wow. And so they went and got it. Now this was like old medicine.
Sure. Out of date,
third
probably.
tier level medicine. and not the right medicine.
Right.
Now, with cerebral malaria, I read that if you don't get the right medicine in the first 72 hours, then your prognosis goes in the toilet.
Right.
We were 5 days in already.
Wow.
And this was not even the right medicine.
Right.
And it was pills, and I was in a coma.
Right.
So they actually had to crush the pills up and figure out how to put them in my IV.
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
Wow.
that's like strike one. You know,
Yeah.
I should have been dead already, actually, because of that. And it just got worse. You know, in the Russian healthcare system, or at least in those hospitals, there's not a waiting area. Karen
Sure.
didn't get to see me.
Sure.
You don't have access to the doctors. She was able to communicate with the doctors between 10 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. That was it.
Right. Right.
She had no information otherwise.
And there's a language barrier there too.
Yeah. Either Ilya would call and get the information, then call
Yeah.
Karen, or he would come and get Karen. They would go together to the hospital.
Yeah.
Once a day, they could find out what was going on with me.
Sure.
Every single day, the doctors said, "We're surprised he's still alive. We almost lost him last night. He probably won't live another 12 hours."
So the message that I got from Karen on Facebook, you know this now, because if you've gone back through and you've looked at Karen's Facebook post over the last while you were ill, the 2 or 3 weeks while you were ill, she was posting on Facebook.
Yeah, she started updating people.
As regularly as she could to reach out to friends and family members to pray. We were trying to find a way to get you out of Siberia, to get you to France or somewhere else where they could treat a tropical disease. The problem was that the insurance company, which is a great insurance company that you had for travel insurance, which is the highest level I think you can buy. That company, it was going to be $120,000 minimum
Oh,
to
really?
ambulance air vac you out out of Siberia to the closest European nation that could treat this. And so they were trying to communicate. Karen was trying to communicate. We were all trying to find someone that could ship you out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My doctor worked 3 days straight just trying to find medicine and work on that.
Yeah, we had 2 or 3 conversations about your status and what would work. And at one point, he and I and CJ were going to fly over and try to fly you back on a private Lear or a private citation to fly you to the States.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that didn't work out either. But at one point, Karen basically said that the physicians basically just came out and told Karen when she delivered you originally to the hospital that say your farewells to your husband because he most likely won't survive.
Remember him like you last saw him. Yeah.
Right, because he most likely won't survive. So keep going. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I mean, it was nonstop like that for her. I mean, she entered into her own private hell.
Yeah.
You know, when I got taken to the hospital, and
sure, you're in Siberia. In a country that doesn't treat malaria,
right?
In a country that has a very less advanced medical system, in a language that your wife doesn't speak.
Right.
Luckily, she had Ilya, the other pastor there, who speaks Russian.
Right.
But still, in a system that she doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And her husband has just contracted cerebral malaria, is in a coma, and no one knows how to treat him.
Right. Yeah. And it got complicated because, you know, when they got those first 2 boxes of pills, you know, they were thinking, well, it was basically a day's worth of medicine. This will buy some time to get some other medicine shipped in. But medicine for cerebral malaria doesn't exist in Russia.
Right.
So they didn't have any.
Right.
Because Bob was looking, my doctor, Bob Duell, was looking all over the world for some, but he couldn't get it to Russia. He was going to fly and get it and fly it in or
the
whatever.
doctor, from what I understand from talking to him, the doctors that were there wouldn't accept a lot of the outside medication.
They couldn't take it because it wasn't
regulated
it wasn't approved in Russia.
Right.
So,
Which makes you, what is approved in Russia?
Right. I mean, so, you know, by the time I actually got it, when the French showed up, it had been 8 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before I got the right medicine. Gosh, I should have been dead, you know, 10 times over.
So the story there, the specifics about it. So I'll tell you this, and Steve talked about it a little bit earlier with me off off audio, off recording, but he's got some cognitive issues that he's dealing with, some thinking, processing, cognitive issues that he's dealing with from this. Remember, this is cerebral malaria, so it's attacked. So the primary place with this, where this organism likes to attack, is the brain. Mm-hmm. It's the central nervous system. Yeah. And so he's working through that, but you wouldn't believe how well he has recovered, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. But the story is then that at that point, at about 8 days in, we finally, your wife, and through the coordination of your friends and family and your insurance company and everybody.
My daughter was wearing out every embassy she could find.
We talked several occasions. Mm-hmm. They got a team from France.
Yeah, they came in.
A tropical disease hospital in France.
Yes, and part of the issue with finding a team to come in is nobody wanted me.
Right.
The Russians didn't want me because I was going to die.
Right.
And they couldn't treat me.
Right.
The evac teams didn't want me because I wouldn't survive the flight.
Right. They had to medically stabilize you.
I was going to die, Right. And actually the Russians were surprised that I even made it to the plane. They didn't think I was going to make the transport to the plane. The destination hospitals didn't want me because I was going to die. My organs had already started shutting down. My kidneys had shut down. My liver had shut down. My spleen was already twice its size. They kept telling Karen that it was about to explode. That doesn't sound good. I'm not
your spleen, cleans out. It's what cleans out everything. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not supposed to explode.
No,
yeah,
no.
And so
it's called death. It's full of blood vessels.
Yeah,
it's very vascular.
Obviously, I couldn't breathe on my own.
Right, you were intubated. You're completely
intubated, and my heart kept wanting to stop. And so they had this delicate balance of blood pressure medicine and adrenaline to try to keep my heart beating.
So let's face it, dude. I mean, plain and simple, the fact that they were able to keep you alive is a miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a miracle.
Yeah, my doctor said, you got great medical care. They just didn't have the tools.
Right.
Well, the French,
they were good practitioners. They just didn't have the right technology.
Yeah, but I stayed alive, and honestly, there's no reason for me to be alive except God did something.
Yeah.
When Karen started putting things on Facebook, and probably within hours, if not within a day, maybe, it basically went viral.
Yeah, I know.
And we're guessing. I mean, and so we had people that were praying all over the world. Yeah. I had a friend that started counting the responses that we got. He stopped at 23 countries. So we're figuring easily over 30 countries, tens of thousands of people. Yeah. I just had lunch with a buddy of mine that said, our church was praying for you. The whole church was. It's 10,000 people church.
Yeah.
In Chicago. And I get stories like that constantly. And Karen and the girls were getting messages from people all over the place that we didn't know at all.
So if you guys, all right, so I'm going to say something that might offend some of my listening audience. If it does, then you can stop listening. Hey, plain and simple. We're not that big anyway, so it really doesn't matter. But and I do this for free, and it really doesn't matter either. But I'll just tell you that if you're thinking about Christianity in the way you normally think about it, potentially like even me, I grew up. I'm a Christian. I grew up in kind of a Christian environment. But if you think about Christianity in the way that you see it commercialized, or the way that you see it in society today, versus the real deal, Steve Lawson is the real deal, guys. He's one of my spiritual mentors. When I have challenges with my 3 daughters, he has 3 daughters, and I'll call him and I'll say, hey, I need your advice on something. And what I love about Steve is that he's authentic, and he's authentic because he's Christ-like. And, man, he's definitely the real deal. And so if you want to meet Jesus with flesh on, he's not perfect. Steve's not perfect, but he represents Christ in everything that he does, and he is a great ambassador for spreading God's grace and his mercy and his constant, unconditional, forgiving kindness to the world. And the fact that he's here today is nothing short of a miracle.
Yeah,
it really is nothing short of a
There's no explanation for it. I mean, and obviously there's no way we can even scratch the surface on this story in this podcast. But, right. I mean, the reasons that I should be dead are endless almost.
Yeah.
And The only explanation is God was doing something.
Yeah.
Now, let me say this though. I mean, I'm so happy to be alive, and we can get into it a little bit, but Karen and I have talked about this. God was doing something else besides just keeping me alive. I mean, he was awakening people all over the world. We got so many messages from people that we don't know.
Sure.
That said, when I read that post, I started weeping and immediately started praying.
Yeah.
When I read that post, I couldn't sleep. I prayed all night long.
Yeah.
When I read that post, I mentioned it to my pastor, our whole church has been praying for you. People we don't know.
Yeah, sure.
And it's not, I don't have a household name. No one knows who I am. And
really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And yet these people were doing,
sure.
Hundreds of thousands of people were messaging Karen and the girls, really.
Yeah.
So that just blows my mind. I'm humbled by it. I'm amazed by it. And God was up to something.
Sure.
At the same time, by the time we got home, we had one friend, her husband died while we were gone.
Right.
Of a heart attack.
Right.
Had another friend who was dying. He has died now of cancer. He had cancer and a couple strokes. He fought it, and there were hundreds or thousands of people praying for him too.
Yeah.
But he died.
Yeah. Sure.
So I don't have an explanation of why I'm alive and Barry's not.
Right. You can't put it in a pack. You can't put the creative force into a packaged product, or say, if you do this, this will always happen. If you do this, this will always happen.
Yeah.
That's just not how it works.
I actually had somebody send me a message that was angry at my story.
Yeah.
Because, he's like, you're arrogant to think that God did this for you and not my wife, who I prayed for 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah. And you know what? You don't have to have an answer.
No,
I
don't.
Have to have an answer.
I mean, I haven't tried to answer that one for a long time. But anyway, I just wanted to say that because there'd be people who are listening to this podcast that are hurting.
Yeah, sure.
And it seems like God hasn't done anything. And, I mean, Karen suffered through that.
Sure.
I mean, she spent, some time one day convinced I was dead and had to struggle with that.
Yeah.
And God doesn't always do what we say, but God's always at work.
Yeah.
And he's with us. He's close to the brokenhearted. David said, even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you're with me.
Yeah.
God's with you.
Yeah.
Even when you're in the valley of the shadow of death.
Sure.
David said, I walk through it.
Right.
God didn't deliver him from it.
Right. He didn't say, I walk around it.
Yeah, and he didn't say, I cried out and you delivered me from it.
Yeah.
He didn't say that. He said, you were with me.
Yeah.
And so I want to acknowledge that
sure.
that this is a great story, and I love telling it.
Yeah.
But I just want to acknowledge that there are people that are hurting, that it seems like they don't have the same story.
Well,
but God is still on the throne. God's still the God of love, and still deserves our worship and praise. So anyway, let me kind of.
You went from Siberia, and then you were flown.
Yes.
To France, air-vac'd, basically, with a medical team.
The cool thing is the medical team brought the right medicine, right?
Right.
But they weren't allowed to bring it into the hospital because the Russian doctors couldn't administer it.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be administered in the hospital because it wasn't Russia approved.
Right.
But they brought it with them anyway.
Right.
And they when they got there, they had a mandatory 8-hour rest before they could load me on the plane and fly me anywhere.
Right.
And they were supposed to administer the medicine on the plane. But they didn't want to wait, so they brought it with them.
Sure.
Came to the hospital to see me. They're talking to the head doctor. I don't remember what her title was, but she was in the room with her, and she asked them through the translator, "Did you bring the medication?" They said yes. Kind of like,
sure.
Of course it's on the plane.
Sure.
They weren't going to admit anything yet.
Yeah.
She said, "No. Did you bring it with you?"
Wow.
And they said, "Yes, we did." And she said, "I need to leave the room."
Wow.
And so she left.
Sweet.
She left. They slipped me some drugs.
Yeah.
And then went for their rest.
Slipped you a Mickey?
Yeah. And so, I mean, at the time,
yeah,
I'll butcher the details of things, but the parasite level, per whatever measure of blood, was at 500,000. at the time. They gave me medication, went for the rest, came back 8 hours later. It was down to 90,000.
Wow.
I still really wasn't stable enough to fly.
Sure.
But much better.
You were still in a coma, though.
Yeah, I was still in a coma, yes. Yeah. And so, anyway, they loaded me on the plane. They loaded me on the plane, but the funny thing is when we got to the airport, Karen's telling me this. They put me on a lift. They drove out onto the tarmac to this plane. They put me on one of those scissor lifts, lift you up, so they could wheel the gurney into the plane. I had got to travel in an actual ambulance this time because of all the crap attached to me. There was one ambulance in the entire city, and we got it for free. And that was another great story. Anyway, so put on this lift. Well, they couldn't figure the lift out. And Karen said they farted with this lift for about 30 to 45 minutes.
Oh, man.
While I was on it, and it was raining in Siberia. Yeah. Yeah, good time to be in a coma, right? So, I mean...
It's not exactly a vacation in Jamaica or something.
No, I imagine it was a bit cold.
Yeah.
So anyway, flew to France, but having the right medicine, parasite level coming down wasn't the end of the story.
Sure.
I was in a coma for another 5 days in France. In the meantime, I was still up and down. I developed sepsis in my blood, which could have killed me. I had a secondary infection in my blood, which they didn't know what it was. I did a spinal tap to figure that out. That could have killed me. A variety of things.
Yeah, your immune system was crashed.
Yeah.
And let's face it, it was trying to fight the malaria, and everything else that is opportunistic started attacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I woke up 5 days later.
What was that like? Were you like, what is up?
Well, it was.
Where am I?
It was a quite unique experience because, you know what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
Because, I woke up in the middle of a sponge bath. Yeah. That's not near as fun as we imagined when we were high school kids, No. You got a male nurse and a female nurse, bathing me. And they were being thorough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was one of those. And the problem was I couldn't move.
Yeah.
I was too weak to move.
Yeah.
And I couldn't talk because my throat, they had taken the tube out in the meantime. And I was breathing on my own finally. But I couldn't talk because my throat was just too screwed up.
Sure.
So I couldn't tell them to quit. I couldn't push them away. I just had to endure it and wonder what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
One of my first thoughts was, well, this isn't heaven.
Yeah.
And
I'm not dead.
Right.
Or hopefully I'm not.
Right. Thank the Lord. I went back to sleep pretty quick.
Yeah.
And woke up later. Karen was in there with me, and she says, "Do you know where you are?" I said, "No. I'm a little freaked out at this moment."
Yeah.
She says, "You're in France." I said, "What the hell am I doing in France?" She said, "Oh, you were in a coma for 10 days."
You're like,
really?
What?
Yes. It was just the weirdest experience, Yeah. And I couldn't move, obviously, And so really for the next 10 days, she had to feed me.
Yeah.
She had to give me water. I mean, put the straw in my cup. I couldn't even get the straw in my mouth. Right. I couldn't pick up my water cup. I existed on pudding and applesauce.
Sure.
But I couldn't pick that up either. And I couldn't do anything for myself. I couldn't go to the bathroom. Nurses had to
catheterize.
And then take care of me for other things. And,
sure.
I mean, it was eye-opening, I guess.
Yeah.
Unique is a minor term to use.
Yeah, sure.
For all of that. But one kind of interesting thing back to what I said a while ago was I woke up on May the 30th. And so, I mean, we're all very excited I'm alive, and I woke up then. I woke up on May the 30th. My mom died from colon cancer on May the 30th.
Wow.
9 years ago.
Wow.
So, I don't think that's coincidence. Yeah. I mean, it could be. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
It is a reminder, though,
that,
God's not at our beck and call.
Yeah.
And plenty of people are praying for Mom, too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And again, I don't know why I'm alive and she's not.
Right.
But I don't ask those
questions. It's a mystery.
Questions.
It's a mystery, and it's really not a question that we're supposed to answer.
No. So anyway, the next 10 days, I spent with people doing everything for me.
Sure.
And one of the things that I guess I started to think about, or God was showing me, or something, was how difficult that was for me. I mean, none of us want people to take us to the bathroom.
Sure.
Or feed us. We want to do things on our own.
Sure.
We don't like.
Well, we're independent.
Yeah, we don't like needing that kind of help.
Right.
And so, I just started thinking about that and realizing. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. Sorry.
You were thinking about how everybody was helping you.
Yeah.
And you couldn't help yourself.
Sorry. My brain still doesn't work right.
Yeah.
And,
you couldn't help yourself.
Right.
And they were sponge bathing
and
you.
I needed people, and
yeah.
And I started thinking about, I wonder how often this attitude, that I was having in this crisis moment spills over into real life.
Right.
That we don't like asking for help.
Right. Sure.
We don't like needing help, but we do.
Yeah.
But the problem is we still try to do everything on our own.
Right.
And I just wonder how many times we settle. We're talking about, this is 40 Fit Radio.
Right.
I mean, how many people do we know been working out for decades, not getting anywhere?
Right.
Because they're too proud to get a coach.
Or get help. Or learn something new.
And what kind of difference, could a coach make?
Yeah.
I mean, we know this.
Right.
But we still have trouble with it.
Yeah.
You know? And so, I'm thinking about these things, and, my own helplessness kind of brought it, to my face. Well, the last day I was in France, we were going to fly home the next day, had that all arranged. That was an ordeal in itself.
Yes, it was.
I mean, you tried to get me another jet for that, I think. But that day,
when they told me it was going to be like 180,000, I told them he's just not worth that much. Plain and simple, he's just not worth that much.
We're not that good of friends.
Yeah. When they brought it down around 80K, I was thinking,
still no.
still no. But but luckily you flew. They were able to get you.
We made it. I mean, they flew me first class part of the way, and actually flew coach from Atlanta to Dallas. That was excruciating.
Which guys, you got to. So we will post, when we post this podcast, which will be next week, because this is coming out next week, we'll post a thumbnail picture, and it'll probably be done a little differently because I want you to see the stark difference in these two pictures, because I'm going to take a picture with Steve tonight after the podcast, and then we're gonna show you a picture of Steve when he was in the hospital, and you won't recognize the guy.